I told my mom she's acting narcissistic after she ruined my birthday with constant criticism and her selfish needs. And now she's silent. My mother, 53F, and I, 14F, have a challenging relationship, and I want to start by mentioning that she has difficulties with everyone around her, including my father, 55M, my grandmother on my father's side, 75F, who stays with us occasionally, and both of her parents, 85F and 91M, with whom she mostly has no contact and lives in another state. Regardless of the occasion, be it her birthday, my father's birthday, my own birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or even on a daily basis, she seems unable to comprehend that the world doesn't revolve around her. Everything must cater to her. Her immaturity is evident, as she tends to become upset and ruin events for everyone if she is not completely satisfied. For instance, my birthday a few months ago serves as a prime example. This year, I wasn't particularly inclined to celebrate as I was in a low mood, and having been homeschooled for the last year, I didn't have any friends. Despite my lack of interest, my mother insisted I have a party or go out because I turned 14 this year, which coincides with my birth date on the 14th, a so-called golden birthday. Because of this concept, she became adamant that I should celebrate. This may seem trivial, but I do not particularly like gold. I find it acceptable in jewelry to some extent, but not as a primary color for celebration. This detail will be significant later. She continually pressured me to organize something for my birthday, and I finally relented, suggesting perhaps a trip to the city for dinner, along with a well-decorated chocolate cake. Having recently lost a considerable amount of weight, I was happy with my appearance and thought it a nice idea to treat myself. Her immediate response was, "No, I don't think the city is the right choice. What about the cheesecake factory down the street? They have cake too." I simply expressed my disinterest, stating I preferred no celebration at all since I initially wanted no party, no gifts, especially considering my parents are notorious for giving me many IOU gifts that are never fulfilled. When my father learned of my plans, he felt quite upset because he knew I had never enjoyed my birthday, as my mother always commandeered it by deciding the location, the food, and the guest list, mainly her friends' children. I would not have minded this as much if I could have invited the people I wanted, but her friends' kids generally treated me poorly and fell outside my age group. Understanding all this, my father went ahead and arranged a reservation at a fancy restaurant overlooking the water for my birthday and encouraged me to select a nice outfit and to enjoy myself in the coming week. I was grateful for his kindness and agreed to the plan. Later, while browsing the internet for a fancy shirt and trousers, my mother found me and insisted I find a dress, claiming it would be inappropriate not to be dressed properly, so I acquiesced and searched for a dress. After trying on multiple dresses, my mother disapproved of all of them, saying they were unattractive and that she would never wear them. She seemed puzzled about my choices, particularly since I had previously been overweight, implying that I shouldn't expect to look good in a dress given my past. At this time, I weighed around 47 kg, approximately 103 pounds, at a height of 5 feet 2 inches, which hardly qualifies as chubby. She even suggested that I somehow deserved criticism for choosing dresses like that. It's worth noting that none of these dresses were risque. They were all maxi dresses with only the collarbone and arms exposed, which is common for dresses. I had even attempted to choose long sleeve options, which she dismissed. Eventually, she suggested her own options, which I found to be quite gaudy and somewhat revealing for my taste. We came to a compromise that primarily favored her preferences. Then came the issue of the cake. My father, who was handling the dinner reservations, asked her to order the cake after consulting me. I have a strong appreciation for cake designs and think they can look quite lovely, but I don't mind a simple cake. I essentially conveyed that I wanted a straightforward design for convenience, yet she insisted it should be special for my golden birthday, as she enjoys celebrations. Ironically, she often cries about feeling disrespected if we celebrate her achievements or birthdays, claiming that nobody loves or cares for her. Yet again, I agreed and searched for nice decorations, but she rejected every single idea until she finally accepted one. When my birthday arrived, we went to dinner, which was tolerable. I attempted to enjoy the evening, but my mother continuously made disparaging comments about me, my father, and my grandmother. However, as my father had organized the entire reservation for my benefit, I tried to make the best of it and express my gratitude. Additionally, my mother adorned the house with gold balloons, despite my clear disinterest, but I chose to accept it, assuming she was trying to be kind, as she usually disregards my preferences. Eventually, we returned home to cut the cake. Each year on my birthday, she takes charge of cutting the cake and blowing out the candles, and this year was no exception. However, when we opened the cake, it was entirely different from what we had initially agreed upon. It was a chocolate cake with a sugar-free ganache that only she would like, devoid of any decorations apart from gold glitter cherries. The cherries were problematic because, during the previous year's birthday, I had a cake adorned with red glitter cherries, and those friends I invited had excluded me, choosing to pick the cherries off my cake before I could even enjoy them, as had my mother. In the present moment, I inquired why she had chosen the cherries, and she explained that she wanted to taste them since those selfish children had consumed them all before she had a chance. This previous year was notable for me as it was the first time I could invite whom I wanted, yet the friends I chose ended up bullying me. My mother frequently reminds me of this experience whenever she gets a chance. I simply went with the flow, letting her cut the cake, and everyone else and I took a slice. None of us enjoyed it except for her, and she devoured the entire cake by herself. After a long day, once I opened the presents, which were the usual IOUs that were never fulfilled, I decided to go to bed. The following morning, my mother started speaking to me about her life, advising me to never have children and be a stay-at-home mother, as it would ruin my life like it did hers, despite her knowing I have no desire to have children. She spent an hour lamenting how she hated me, wished I had never been born, and longed for me to be someone she wanted, then expected me to console her. I simply told her it was unfortunate that she feels this way about me, but since she loves my father, she has no justification for her narcissistic behavior at every event and throughout our daily lives. Now, she has given me the cold shoulder and has avoided speaking to me for months. This was over 5 months ago. I would like to provide additional context. I share this story because it has been weighing on my mind, but she has behaved this way at every event throughout my life and my family's lives. She is inherently a cruel individual, treating my father harshly despite his efforts to please her. She even mistreats my grandmother and dislikes her deeply. For anyone wondering why my father does not leave her, they have been together longer than they have been apart, and he loves her. He acknowledges that marrying her may not have been the best choice, but he feels a sense of commitment that prevents him from leaving her. As for my mother, I want to mention that she frequently reminds everyone that I was born on the same day my grandfather passed away on my father's side. Although he was not a good person, his early death left my grandmother grieving, even if my father had a strained relationship with him. I never met my grandfather, as my father despised him, and for me, he passed away days before my birth. I was born on the anniversary of his passing, and my mother takes pleasure in reminding everyone each year, labeling it a ghostly curse that makes it uncomfortable and awkward for those around. Throughout my life, she has consistently shown favoritism towards other children and has been a significant factor in my homeschooling. It's a long, distressing story for another day, but I faced challenges at school due to bullying and being ostracized, essentially being used as a target for ridicule. My mother did not help the situation. Rather, she actively caused problems that provided others more reasons to bully me. For instance, when I attended school last year, my father asked my mother to do something nice for my birthday. She proceeded to write, "Happy birthday, you're 13, on her truck. While I thought this was sweet, she refused to remove it months later, claiming it was a form of art, regardless of my feelings about being bullied because of it. Furthermore, she rarely dropped me off at school after a past incident where she found me annoying, dropping me on the side of the road, leaving me late for school and struggling to navigate my way. Afterward, my father prohibited her from ever dropping me off again. There were numerous instances where I tried to spend time with friends, but she deliberately made a point to humiliate me or create problems. One particular incident caused so much trouble that it resulted in my being homeschooled. Overall, my mother consistently behaves in a mean-spirited manner, acting as if everything must revolve around her, affecting my father, my grandmother, and me. Since the new year, she has refused to engage in a meaningful conversation with me, only addressing me to be rude. Despite my multiple apologies for suggesting she acted like a borderline narcissist, she still seeks me out to vent her problems, but refuses to accept any apology I offer, declaring it insufficient. I previously expressed that it is unnecessary for her to make everything about her, yet she still gets upset when we celebrate her and asserts once again that we neglect her when we do not. I also pointed out that it is unfair for her to mistreat every family member when we have treated her kindly, making it seem as though we constantly have to walk on eggshells around her to avoid unnecessary drama. To conclude, I want to clarify that I do struggle with empathy and compassion. I lack these feelings, but understand emotions and behaviors. I have cognitive empathy and grasp when people deserve better treatment. In this narrative, I am most likely not overreacting, as I addressed her calmly, but I sought outside perspectives in case I was mistaken. Did I do something wrong or overreact in this situation? Story 2. After a year of dating and engagement, my fiancé suddenly shouted and left during a disagreement, spiraling into trauma mode. I understand this is a lengthy narrative, but I genuinely require assistance, so please bear with me context. I adore my fiancé completely. She is undoubtedly the kindest, most affectionate, grateful, and amazing woman I have ever dated, unequivocally. I feel incredibly fortunate to have her in my life. We share an extraordinary level of compatibility across various aspects. Unfortunately, she has endured severe trauma, having been raped previously, and she is also divorced. Her former husband was neglectful and abusive in numerous ways, and she tragically attempted suicide 3 times during that relationship. They were together for a year before marrying, and their marriage lasted about a year. Approximately 8 months following her divorce, we crossed paths. Although we recognized that the timing was not ideal due to its recency, the unique connection we felt compelled us to date anyway. Now, after about a year of dating, we have just become engaged, and we plan to marry in the upcoming months. Both of us are religious and have chosen not to engage in sexual relations before marriage. Furthermore, I refrain from masturbation and pornography. I have not partaken in either since shortly before we began dating. One issue she faced with her ex was that he would continually pressure her into sexual activities, insisting that since she was his wife, it was her obligation, which understandably made her feel uncomfortable. Example situation: this evening, we had a disagreement. In addition to agreeing not to engage in sexual relations before marriage, we established boundaries regarding physical contact and agreed not to be naked in each other's presence. From the outset, I made it clear that I was only interested in physical affection if it was entirely consensual and comfortable. Whenever she has communicated discomfort, I have ceased my actions and apologized. I have never crossed any lines without consent and have adhered to the boundaries we set from the beginning. Over the past year of our relationship, we have grown increasingly comfortable with each other and have both expressed a desire to touch and kiss one another, with the exception of the areas we agreed to avoid. We have been cautious to keep everything non-sexual. Whenever things escalate and we feel they are shifting in that direction, we simply stop and cuddle instead. I have never done anything she has requested I not do, and if she expresses any discomfort, I stop immediately. She has indicated that she is comfortable with me touching her breasts in a non-sexual manner and has requested massages there on multiple occasions. I have stated that I am also okay with it, provided there are some layers between us, so it does not feel too much like I am touching her breasts. She seems indifferent to the number of layers, but I have always ensured that my comfort level is considered, which she has respected and appreciated. My libido is higher than average, and it can be challenging at times to refrain from all things sexual. I have shared my struggles with her a few times in the past. Initially, she was very kind and supportive, but eventually, her attitude shifted to irritation, as she felt I was implying she should take action regarding it, in this instance, a passionate make-out session, still non-sexual. I clarified that I was sharing simply to confide in her and assured her that I was not trying to pressure her. This situation recurred, so I began to keep these feelings to myself. We have discussed our expectations for our future sexual life and have reached mutual understanding regarding frequency and scenarios, which is why I was taken aback by recent developments recently. She has stated she wants me to be able to share anything with her. When she inquired last week about how things were going, I responded that everything was wonderful, but that self-control was somewhat challenging. I immediately clarified that I was not suggesting she should do anything about it. Everything seemed fine afterward. A similar situation arose on Saturday, and tonight again, although I did not explicitly clarify that I was not attempting to solicit anything from her by mentioning it, I thought that was implied. Nonetheless, the conversation seemed to proceed smoothly. Regardless, this evening we were cuddling, and as I was adjusting my arm, which was uncomfortable, I accidentally left it rested across her chest and remarked, "That's better," as I felt at ease. She responded, "Oh yeah, of course, now that it is on my breasts," prompting me to quickly move my arm back into an awkward position. After a few minutes, I expressed regret that she thought I was trying to overstep a boundary and touch her inappropriately. I wished she would have communicated that she was uncomfortable rather than assuming. She reassured me she understood I wasn't attempting anything inappropriate and that it was acceptable, but I still sensed that something was amiss. From my perspective, she then shifted into what I might view as a trauma response and began discussing how I have been sharing my feelings of arousal excessively lately in her view. Excessively. In mine, not very much, and how much pressure she felt, asserting that it was unhealthy and disrespectful for me to expect a sexual encounter every time we are alone. I informed her that I do not hold such an expectation. We have previously discussed our mutual understanding, and I believe that expectation would be unhealthy and disrespectful as well. She seemed skeptical, became frantic, yelled, "F me," and hurried out of my residence. She drove away quickly and later texted me about her frustration, to which I replied that I felt she did not comprehend my intentions and suggested we take a break, while still expressing my love for her and proposing we revisit the topic later. Her response was simply, "Wow, okay." The issue. While I am open to constructive feedback on that specific incident, my main intent in sharing this is to illustrate a moment when I feel I am perceived as her ex in her mind. Every time this occurs, the following day she acknowledges it and apologizes, but it remains challenging for me. I wish to understand how to better navigate these situations, as it deeply pains me to witness the emotional turmoil she experiences during these episodes. It is also challenging for me. I recognize that her history of abuse and trauma is not her fault, but it is not my fault either. Here I am at 1:40 a.m. reaching out to strangers on the internet because I find it difficult to sleep. During these episodes, she sometimes strikes her head against hard surfaces, something she has confided in me she increasingly does and fears may harm her brain, which understandably breaks my heart. I often feel uncertain about how to respond, as I want her to feel she can share openly with me without fear, so I typically express my sympathy and offer her a hug or similar comfort. I have not disclosed these episodes or her self-harm to anyone, as I do not want to sully anyone's perception of her, knowing how kind and wonderful she truly is. Furthermore, I understand that she is not fully in control during these episodes, and it is not her fault due to her trauma. However, it is difficult not to have someone to confide in or seek guidance from. These episodes can occur multiple times a week or may not happen for months. On average, I would estimate they happen every 2 weeks, usually linked more to the stress she experiences in her daily life than to issues in our relationship. Recently, she has been under significant work-related stress, making matters more difficult. She is also opposed to seeking therapy either individually or as a couple due to financial constraints and her upcoming loss of her parents' insurance as she turns 26. Additionally, her past experiences with therapists have been quite variable. I, however, would be willing to pursue it, as I believe it would be worth the investment for a healthier relationship. She is the most important person in my life. If I were to insist, I believe she would agree to therapy. I cannot emphasize enough how genuinely kind and wonderful she is, and how sincerely she apologizes for these episodes the following day, despite my insistence that it is not truly her fault since it reflects a trauma response. She would do anything for me, and I, likewise, would do anything for her. I welcome your insights, constructive criticisms, and suggestions. I recognize there is a lot to unpack, so feel free to comment on any or all aspects of this situation. I genuinely need assistance, so please consider recommending a book. Summary in times of disagreement. At times it seems she views me as though I were like her ex-spouse. Guidance would be appreciated.